Park rangers, the brave souls who patrol and protect our wilderness areas. But what happens when the sun goes down and the shadows grow long? Are they really alone in the dark? Here are 3 disturbing park ranger horror stories that should give you some newfound respect for these unsung heroes. As a search and rescue ranger for the U.S. Forest Service, I've had some experiences that I feel are worth sharing. I've been working in this field for a few years now, and I've seen some things that have left a deep impact on me. I hope that by sharing these stories I can raise awareness about the importance of wilderness safety. First, a little background on what I do out in the wild. So one of my primary responsibilities is to locate missing individuals. Most of the time, people wander off the path or slip down a small cliff, and they can't find their way back. In such cases, the majority of the missing individuals have heard the old "stay where you are" advice, and they don't wander off. However, there is one case that bothered me a lot, and I use it as my motivation to search even harder on the missing persons cases I get called on. This incident involved a little boy and his sister who were out picking berries with their parents. Both he and his sister went missing around the same time. They were both about 8 or 9 years old, I think. Their parents lost sight of them for a few seconds, and when they couldn't find them, they called us for help. My colleagues and I take our jobs pretty seriously since every second counts out in the wild. Luckily, we found the daughter pretty quickly, but the boy was nowhere to be found. When we asked where her brother was, she told us that he had been taken away by the bear man. She claimed that he gave her berries and told her to stay quiet, and that he wanted to play with her brother for a while. The last thing she saw was her brother riding on the shoulders of this bear man, and apparently he seemed happy. Our initial thought was that the boy had been abducted, but we never found a trace of another human being in the area. The little girl was insistent that he was not a normal man, but that he was tall and covered in hair, like a bear, and had a weird face. None of this made sense. We searched that area for weeks and weeks. It was one of the longest calls I've ever been on, but we never found a single trace of that poor boy. It was heartbreaking when we had to pack our bags and call it in, especially since I was the one who had to inform the parents that their little boy couldn't be found. This specific incident and the questions that are still in my head haunt me to this day, and I think about it all very often. It has been 2 years since then, and I was moved to a different region. At this point, all I can do is pray that the little boy is safe wherever he is. As a wildlife park ranger in the remote forests of Montana, I'd seen a lot of crazy stuff over the years. However, I wouldn't say that I've had it bad. I get to stay out in the wild, enjoy the beautiful scenery, and take in the fresh air. But every now and then, some really disturbing stuff happens around here. Let me tell you about one of them. It was July 15th, and I was on my usual rounds around the park. The sky was clear, full of stars, and the full moon looked beautiful over the forest. As I made my way through the woods, I could smell the familiar scent of pine and damp earth. It was peaceful, and I was enjoying my walk, looking up at the stars and just listening to the sounds of the forest. If this sounds like a soothing experience, it's because it is. But it wasn't relaxing for very long. About 30 minutes into my rounds, I heard a deep, guttural growling sound in front of me that made me freeze in my tracks. For some context, it is a park, but it's also a forest. There are bears and coyotes out here. But I never heard a bear make a sound quite like this. Anyway, I pointed my flashlight in the direction of the noise, and I could barely make out a large animal staring back at me. Its eyes were glowing in the dark, and it was foaming at the mouth. I tried to back away very slowly, as they taught us in training, but this creature just kept staring at me. I could feel its growls getting louder and more intense. I was frozen with fear, not knowing what to do. There's only so much you can train for, right? Regardless, I knew I had to make a move, but my body just wouldn't cooperate. I felt like a total rookie. The animal suddenly charged towards me, and I barely had time to dodge its initial attack. It was faster than anything I had ever seen before. I knew right then this was not a normal animal. This was something else. My heart was in my throat as I tried to figure out how to defend myself against this thing. I tried to run and hide, but the animal was faster and smarter. It was like it was playing a sick game of cat and mouse with me or something. As I stumbled through the woods, I could feel its hot breath on the back of my neck. A small part of me had just accepted my fate at this point. I knew what I was signing up for when I put on this uniform. But then, just as I had given up all hope, this animal vanished as quickly as it had appeared. I don't know where it went or why it stopped chasing me. It just disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone and terrified in the woods. For the next few seconds, I was extremely on edge. I was looking left and right, hoping it wouldn't pop up in my blind spots, but nothing happened. It was gone. I reported the incident to my supervisor, but they were just as perplexed as I was. They even brought in a team of wildlife experts to try to identify the creature, but they couldn't find a trace of evidence anywhere. I worked as a park ranger for only 6 days, and I'll tell you why. It was a chilly autumn evening around October 20th. The moon was hidden by a thick layer of clouds, making it difficult to see more than just a few feet in front of me. All of this was new to me. I was just starting out, so I was pretty nervous. This was when I heard a strange chanting sound coming from a nearby clearing. Curiosity was getting the better of me, and since I was the park ranger, I had to go check it out, right? I slowly made my way towards the clearing, making sure not to make too much noise, while shining my flashlight ahead of me. As I got closer, I could see a group of people gathered around a small fire, dressed in these weird black robes, and they were chanting in this strange language. I couldn't tell you what it was. At first, I thought they might be some kind of performance art troupe or college students doing some sort of viral challenges that these kids are all doing nowadays. But as I kept watching, I saw that their chanting was growing more intense, and the air around the clearing was starting to feel thick with, an energy. It was heavy and hard to breathe. Then I realized I wasn't dealing with a bunch of kids. This was something sinister. I tried to back away quietly, but one of the cultists, or whatever they were, noticed my flashlight and pointed in my direction. Suddenly, they all stopped chanting and turned to look at me, all of them, at the same time. I can't explain it, but their eyes were giving off this hatred. All I knew for sure was that I was in danger, serious danger. I just knew I had to get out of there. I didn't have anything to defend myself with besides the stun gun, but what help was that going to be against 15 people? I turned and ran, and the hooded strangers were all screaming at the top of their lungs and started chasing after me. I swear I'd never run that fast in my entire life. I eventually lost them in the dense forest thanks to my knowledge of the layout, but the memory of that night still haunts me. Of course, I reported the incident to my superiors, but they didn't take it seriously. One of them even said it was just a group of overzealous hippies or something. That was it for me. I wasn't even a week into my job, but I had already seen enough. I turned in my uniform the very next day. If you thought these stories were scary, then make sure you watch this next video here if you really want to be scared.